classes. Good evening. I'm Miriam Gilbert, and I'm happy to welcome you here tonight on behalf of the program committee. It's not everyone who gets to see a theater start out and grow and grow. Most of us think of Riverside Theatre as being on Gilbert Street. No relation, I hasten to add, or in City Park. But for me, Riverside Theatre began in Old Brick. Old Brick, if you cast your mind back, had a slightly raised pulpit area and pews, and that was about it. Production values weren't elaborate. Indeed, when I look at the program for the first show I directed there, which was in 1983, 2 years after opening, I find no mention of a set designer. We were doing 3 short plays by Chekhov, and we did have Jean Newkirk finding or constructing more or less period costume. We had some lighting and props. For the short play on the harmful effects of tobacco, the set was just a lectern, which you could very easily carry on stage. Or maybe we used the one that the minister had used. The other 2 plays may well have had more or less the same setting, since both take place in the drawing room of a country estate. How things have changed. From Old Brick to Gilbert Street, from the physical limitations influencing the choice of plays, lots of interest in plays with just a few characters and one set, to the increasingly elaborate work with both set and lighting that we've seen on Gilbert Street. I remember almost gasping when I walked in to see Bakersfield Mist in 2017 and found a set crammed with more objects and things than I had ever seen before at Riverside, but all part of the world of that play. The Shakespeare Theatre in City Park added yet another space, one that is still alive and open and vibrant. I would be remiss not to remind you that the Comedy of Errors opens there on Friday night. It is particularly welcome in these days when we are grateful for live theater, and especially grateful for live theater performed outdoors. So what comes next? Tonight we have with us Adam Knight, who's the producing artistic director of Riverside Theatre, to share the news and vision of where Riverside will go in the coming years, and one of the actors most closely associated with Riverside, Tim Budd, to let us know how it feels to be back on stage. We're getting a view from on stage, backstage, the producing office, Riverside at 41. I will just mention tonight that the competing event you might have thought of attending is on television. But really, the title works both ways, doesn't it? Field of Dreams? Or, in the great line from the novel, if you build it, they will come. I think the same will be true of Riverside Theatre at 41. Adam, Tim.
Hi, everybody. It's so nice, wow, to see real people and to be here in person. I know we're having to do masks again, but gosh, it's good to all be gathering. The last time Tim and I were at Oak Knoll, Uncle Vanya had just opened. Here's a picture. And we were about to begin Riverside's 39th season, which was my first full season at Riverside. That season had several highs for us. Uncle Vanya, obviously. The world premiere of Beast by Megan Gogarty. The Agitators by Matt Smart, which opened right at the Iowa caucuses. I'm still waiting to figure out who won, but it, the story of Frederick Douglass and Susan B. Anthony, and it just felt so satisfying to be producing the right play in the right moment, and that was a really successful play for us. And then David Lee Nelson's Stages, and then it all went away. 2 days before Doll's House Part 2, which was featuring Tim, was supposed to start rehearsals, we called our season. And that was on March 13th, 2020. What we didn't know then was that the last performance of Stages on March 13th would also be the final performance on the Gilbert Street stage. It's difficult to think back on that time, as I'm sure for all of you it is, because there was so much uncertainty within the world and within our organization. I had to drive the writer-performer of Stages, David Lee Nelson, home throughout the night to South Carolina because of a medical emergency. And I remember I had to call into a board meeting that Wednesday after everything shut down, and I was calling in from a McDonald's parking lot somewhere in Indiana. And that was all of a sudden this world that we were in. The questions that would take over the next few months for me and for Riverside were things like, would we be able to pay our staff? When would we be able to perform again? And would Riverside survive that long? What quickly became clear was that the Gilbert Street space was not conducive to any kind of social distancing. Its 118 seats were so crammed together that even if I were to say like seat folks on every other row and spaced apart, it was still too confined of a space. And even then we're talking like 20 people. And its appeal was its intimacy. Something that all of a sudden became a very dangerous thing in our world. On top of that, there were long delayed repairs to a space that we didn't own. As many of you know, those upper rows it was like a different troposphere. The bottom could be cold and the upper rows could be like 90 degrees. And there was an air conditioner that was really on its last life, and so that was kind of a sword of Damocles also hanging over that space. You know, if the air conditioner went down, what would we do? And there were other repairs that had to happen too. And as luck would have it, I guess it's luck, our lease was expiring in July of 2020. We were in the midst of lease negotiations and looking at a rent increase. And we really had to ask ourselves, is this the space for Riverside's next year? Is it the space for Riverside's next 3 years, next 10 years? In the end, we decided it was maybe a good moment, as good as any, to turn the page. Then in the near term, Riverside needed that kind of financial flexibility. We didn't see in the cards being able to perform in that space anytime in the next year, and boy, we were right. And keeping a space that we couldn't use was not the way that Riverside was going to survive the pandemic. And in the long term, Riverside needed a home that could house an even greater range of programming. A few weeks before we left, as we were packing everything up, I invited a few key folks to gather and say goodbye to the space. Ron and Jody and Bruce Wheaton were there, the founders. Tim was there, Megan Gogarty was there, and they told stories and drank wine, and we all sat around masked with the garage door open. And I mostly just listened. And this was actually the 4th theater wake I've been to. It's an emotional affair. You know, you're in this space and thinking, God, the lives that have been led here, not only the actual lives that have come through, and you know, after 39, 40 years, there's a lot of lives, but also, you know, Willy Loman, you know, these great tragedies and great comedies of literature took place in there. What's that line from Death of a Salesman? Respect must be paid. The loss of a theater is not something to take lightly. And so without a space, Riverside had to embark on our 40th anniversary season. This is our space, our sign and our seats in a huge warehouse in Washington, Iowa. I'd say that the part of the mission that felt most crucial to me was that we are a home for passionate theater professionals. And part of being a home is providing the ways and means for artists to do their work. I wanted to employ as many artists as possible during this pandemic, to tell as many stories as possible. We started out with 30 Days of Shakespeare. Here's me performing a monologue from Henry V. It was actually 31 monologues that we performed on social media. Then for the season proper, we focused on solo plays. The reason why is because it's a very pure form of storytelling. It's a storytelling that, here's Patrick Delaney performing one of those solo plays. It's a pure form of storytelling that triggers the imagination. I knew Riverside with its resources was never going to compete with Netflix or for that matter, National Theatre Live. There was so much great archival tapes being released What I did know that we had was we have great actors, and sharing those with our community and really telling stories seemed like a niche that Riverside could fill. Our first play was Fire and Cellar, and then Grounded, and then No Child, which was a co-production with Pure Theatre and Charleston. And then Jody Hovland, one of our founders, in Midnight Your Time by Adam Brace. And I think we were actually the American premiere of Midnight Your Time. It had premiered at Donmore Warehouse in this version of the play earlier, right at the top of the pandemic. And then A Christmas Carol. And then Walking the Wire, which was re-envisioned for this moment with several monologues, each performed by the writers or by an actor, performed all over the country and kind of released every day on social media in the month of October. And that was 6 productions in the fall. That's a lot of productions for Riverside to be doing. When 2021 rolled around and we were still not able to do live shows, we decided to release stages. Stages, as I mentioned, was the last show on the Gilbert Street stage. It was also the last show that writer-performer David Lee Nelson ever performed because he died that September. And so it was very bittersweet, and he was my best friend. But the amazing kismet of it all is that we recorded that final production, that final performance. And so we edited the footage and created a document that was not only the last document of David's artistic life, but also of our stage. We partnered with Holden Comprehensive Cancer Center and the Iowa Cancer Consortium to bring this play not only to Riverside audiences, but to as part of their outreach efforts as well. Also in the spring, we reimagined Willpower, which is our school tour. Obviously, we couldn't go into schools, so we re-envisioned it as a series of YouTube videos. There was also Sonnets for an Old Century, which featured 23 local actors in this crazy green screen world, each telling monologues. And then we partnered with Mirrorbox Theater in Cedar Rapids to do a series of Zoom readings. There was the Sonnet Project, which Sonnets for a New Century was kind of a part of, but we also released a series of people reading sonnets, often in different languages. There was a marathon reading in the park, in the Ped Mall. And then just this last week, we released the Kreutzer Sonata. I don't know if anyone listened to it on IPR Classical on Sunday. But if you didn't get a chance to, the stream is available on IPR's website. Feel free to reach out to me and we'll send you the link. It was very fun and kind of a very strange feeling tuning into 91.7 and listening to this play I directed several months ago finally be heard. It featured music by this Brooklyn classical collective called the Knights, no relation. And I also wondered what it must be like for someone randomly in the car to turn this on and all of a sudden be hearing this Tolstoy novella being read to them and this very dramatic scene. Tim said it felt like he was transported to 1934. So why do I mention all of these things? I guess because I'm proud of our organization. Whether or not virtual theater is your thing, and I totally get if it's not your thing. It speaks to our organization making artistic leaps in a moment of crisis for the arts. And I would put Jody's performance of Midnight Your Time against Diana Quicks at Donmore Warehouse. I would put our Sonnets for an Old Century against any production of that play. And in fact, the playwright was interviewed by the Press Citizen and said the exact same thing. Riverside didn't just hunker down. We kept telling stories and employing artists. And to zoom this even more out, I think that this area's contribution to the arts and employing artists far surpasses any community our size. I mean, look at Englert Theater's Ghost Creek and their virtual witching hour and how they've been doing the Stages series. Theater Cedar Rapids came up with a really ambitious set of things. This is Elizabeth Von Presley's concert. And then Film Scene's virtual screening room. I think if and when the history of performing arts during the pandemic is told, I hope that people look at this area because I think that the corridor really shone brightly, much more than most communities I know And so after 12 virtual projects this year, there was something so thrilling about returning to live theater again with The Winter's Tale last month. I'll leave it to Tim to maybe speak a little bit more about that, but there was this moment of like looking out at 400 people all here to see theater after giving curtain speeches in my living room for the whole year. And so it was an incredibly emotional moment and wonderful to be able to gather again. The Winter's Tale exceeded both Much Ado's attendance, Much Ado About Nothing's attendance 3 years ago, and Henry IV Part 1's attendance in 2019. It made me feel very good that there continues to be a hunger for live storytelling. And as Miriam mentioned, Comedy of Errors has its final dress tonight and opens tomorrow, so I hope you can make it out to the park to see that. Which is all to say, I think, that Riverside Theatre is in some ways stronger now than it was at the top of this pandemic. Riverside is back, we've survived, and we've got a new theater and a new season ahead. I'd like to tell you a little bit about the new theater. This is one of those moments where I'm so glad that I picked up the call. It was from Kevin Munson of Newman Munson Architects. He told me about a client of his that was embarking on a new project, and they were looking to build a cultural space as part of that. And it turns out it was a perfect fit. The space at 119 East College Street is part of a larger historic preservation project on the south end of the Ped Mall, restoring the storefronts to the 1920 facades and reviving, in our case, a long abandoned building, the upper floors of which squatters had been in and had been essentially left to nature for many, many years. This is how the space looked when we first saw it. And this is how it's going to look. This will be our lobby facing the Ped Mall, with space to enjoy music, to enjoy a drink. If any of you went to the lobby in Gilbert Street, you know it was not exactly a place you wanted to hang out for a very long time. We want to change that here. You know, I'm envisioning people wanting to come early and have a drink and have a conversation. Meet me for a drink before the show. And then after shows, some nights having a live musician playing, or having a talk back before or after a show, and using that lobby as a place to expand kind of the experience, not just from where the stage is.
So where's the facade on that last thing? Where is the part looking out on the Ped Mall?
The windows here. So this is the front of the building here.
Okay.
So it's kind of, maybe with the light it's a little hard to tell, but here's kind of the angle of the room.
Thank you.
And this is a rendering of the theater. The theater is going to be fully flexible. It's a 150-seat house, which is an increase from the 118 seats that Gilbert Street had. Able to be proscenium, thrust, round, tennis court. Essentially, we can tailor the space to fit the play. This whole building has been built to Riverside specifications. We'll have a new HVAC system with HEPA filters. We'll have an ADA-friendly space, not just for audience members, but also for artists. A kind of dirty little secret about Gilbert Street is we couldn't hire actors with mobility needs because there was no way to get them onto the stage. That's not going to be the case anymore. In the lobby, we can house Sunday chats, maybe with Miriam Gilbert, post-show concerts, opera on tap, cabaret performances. The theater itself, as I said, can be tailored to fit the show. You know, a space that can also house Mission Creek concerts for the Englert, the occasional film screening too. It was important to me that the experience at the new theater not try to recreate the Gilbert Street experience, but to be something new. That said, one strong feeling that everyone mentions to me about Gilbert Street is that there wasn't a bad seat in the house. And that's something we want to very much preserve in this new space. The space, amazingly, will be ready in January, which is really, 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 really soon. Here's just a quick layout. It is on 3 levels. The entryway will span the length of the building, so for patrons who want to get dropped off, we'll talk about all this in detail another time, but you can get dropped off at the Graduate and essentially have a straight shot in. This entrance goes to the Ped Mall. Second floor, dressing rooms and expanding green room areas, and also a conference room. And the real Riverside footprint is on the 3rd floor. That much larger theater with much higher ceilings, a shop, a green room, an ADA actor dressing room, larger restrooms, for those of you who experienced Gilbert Street, and that expanded lobby. I always felt like at Gilbert Street, as long as they were with us when the lights went down, we were going to be okay. But the experience coming into the building and getting to that point was always fraught. And in this case, we want that entire experience to be all of a piece. Here's another rendering of just kind of the doll's house version of how, of the kind of audience entry experience. There's going to be stairs, but also a large elevator. This is me 2 days ago in the space. Still a little bit of graffiti there, but they're laying the floor down. And this is Tim, just today in the space.
So you should go today.
We'll open, it was a big kind of question mark in how are we going to open this new space? What is the kind of programming that we're going to bring? And we decided to open the new space with a world premiere. Riverside has had a long history with the National New Play Network. We're the only member of the National New Play Network in Iowa. And we wanted to, this new theater and to bring a play that had never had a life before and to have that be a key part of the celebration. We will be opening with a world premiere by the playwright of The Agitators, Matt Smart. The play Eden Prairie 1971 is set during a very fraught time in America's history when the triumph of the moon landings was clouded by the quagmire of the Vietnam War. It's about 2 young people seeking love and meaning and finding themselves while asking big questions about what it means to be a citizen of a country you don't always agree with. And just in case you need to know that Matt Smart's got bona fides, here's a picture of him with Miriam Gilbert. Next up in March comes The Niceties, which is a drama by Eleanor Burgess. It's a play about a private teacher-student conference at a prestigious university between a white professor and her black student. This is the kind of she said tale of discrimination and microaggressions that are on many people's minds in and out of academia. It's also a return to Riverside presenting timely plays that speak to the now. And then last on the docket, here's a picture, by the way, of a production at Portland Center Stage. Then last on the docket in April-May, we decided to do something a little crazy. We are presenting Natasha Pierre and the Great Comet of 1812 by Dave Malloy. This musical based on War and Peace, some of you maybe read War and Peace earlier this year, was the talk of Broadway a few years ago, and Riverside is one of the first theaters in the country to produce it regionally. The musical started out in a 99-seat house. It actually started out at a theater called Ars Nova, and I used to live a block away from that theater, and I used to direct things in that theater too. And so the idea of bringing this musical back to its kind of off Broadway roots, and while also really flexing Riverside's artistic muscles after this pandemic, expanding the limits of what Riverside has traditionally been able to accomplish while providing audiences with something incredibly unique. I'm particularly thrilled about this project. I think it's going to be fantastic. And then there's the fall. The fall is obviously a little weird. We're still figuring out what we can do, if we're able to do this. But currently what we've got on the docket is The Grand Inquisitor from the Brothers Karamazov by Dostoevsky. Some of you may be reading Brothers Karamazov coming up here soon. This is an adaptation by Marie-Hélène Estienne, who is the principal collaborator with Peter Brook. This production is going to be part of, and I'm not expecting you to be able to read this, this production is going to be part of the Dostoevsky at 200 exhibit at the University of Iowa Libraries. So it will be performed in the gallery as part of that experience. We're still working out exactly how that's going to work out and how many audience members we can have at a time. We're thinking maybe as few as 20, 25, maybe as many as 40. But having that experience be very intimate and kind of really deepening that experience of Tolstoy and the experience of that novel. The other project that we're looking at for this fall is the complete works of Jane Austen abridged. This production comes from a theater company in Philadelphia called Tiny Dynamite. And I came across this play and thought, this looks completely fascinating and perfect for Iowa City. They basically run through all the novels of Jane Austen using 3 actors. It was written to be performed in a historic home. So of course we're scouting out large historic homes for that very purpose. Again, thinking about this as something for a very small audience. I don't think anyone at this point is feeling great about gathering with 200 people or 150 people. And so this is providing an intimate experience while also kind of acknowledging the place that we're at. Riverdog memberships. I'm putting the dog here to sell it. Because of all the uncertainties with this, you'll probably notice a lot of theater companies are moving to membership models, away from subscription models. And the reason is that it gives us all flexibility because there's so many unknowns still. We don't want to sell you a ticket and then have to refund it and go through all that hazarai. So, what these memberships get you is you buy the membership, then you get half off an adult ticket to all live events. That's not only the plays, that's also the cabarets, the opera on tap, any events that we add. It also gives us the ability to add shows as we go and to kind of add value to that membership. Also special concessions pricing. The big thing is advanced ticketing for all live performances. Previously with subscriptions, if you bought a subscription, you bought tickets at the same time single ticket buyers bought them. So someone on the first day tickets go on sale could buy the best seats for all the performances and not even be a subscriber. We wanted to make sure that our members feel special, that they get the seats that they want, and so to release these tickets to members only at the beginning of each run. You also get 10% off theater-related books at Prairie Lights Books and Cafe, which kind of pays for itself if you're like me. Discounted tickets for National Theater Live at Film Scene and special Meet the Artists and Sunday Salon events in the spring, and a members-only open house at the new space this winter. All these things will be in the brochure, but I wanted to share them with you. And of course, the other thing that we're doing is a capital campaign to complete the construction of this new theater. Some of you have already been debriefed about this, and in many ways, I'm debriefing you now. So you are all now insiders to what's happening at Riverside. We'll be launching the campaign publicly in early October. And I'd be pleased to, some of you grab the materials. I think we've now run out of the materials. Miriam, I'm sure would be happy to share any with you. And I'm sure Miriam and Wally would be happy to talk to you more about what this campaign is. We see this campaign as phase 2 of Strengthen, Grow, Evolve. And I know that folks at the Englert and Film Scene feel the same way. Suddenly Iowa City, I think, will really have a bona fide arts district downtown. Riverside being right across from the old film scene, right down the road from Englert. The other way, Boxman, UNESCO City of Literature. It's happening now, and it's very exciting to be a part of that. Riverside's 40th anniversary, 40th birthday was maybe like many people's 40th. We did something a little crazy. We bought a motorcycle. We did virtual theater. And now we're building for the next 40 years. I want you to know that the theater that Ron, Jody, and Bruce founded will continue to tell stories that bring us together, that challenge us, that are new. And Riverside will continue to be a home for artists and continue to shine a light in these challenging times. And I'm very pleased to introduce and share with you Tim Budd, fresh from his role in Winter's Tale.
Hey.
Well, let me first say, this is the second time in front of a live audience in 2 months, and I'm feeling pretty special. So this is kind of, I feel a little gluttonous. I'm listening to both Miriam and Adam, and I'm trying to figure out how I fit into this. It's interesting. My first show that I saw at Riverside was an Old Brick production. When I had first moved to Iowa City, The Glass Menagerie. And as Miriam said, it was very simple, but very moving. And then they moved into the Gilbert Street space, and my first show there was their first season there. And I feel that Gilbert Street and I are sort of fused. So when Adam invited me to the wake, it was very special to finally say goodbye to that place where I sort of had grown up in. I mean, my first show there, I was 27. This month, I turned 60. So it's been a long, Winter's Tale was my 66th show with Riverside. I feel so much a part of it, and it is amazing to go from Old Brick to Gilbert Street to now, for the first time today, Adam showing me the new space. And thinking that it just seemed like the sort of natural evolution of Riverside Theatre, to go from sort of a dream of 3 theater artists that was sort of shoestring, where can we do it, will they come, to really Ron and Jody and Bruce sort of crafting that Gilbert Street space with our own hands, to now going someplace where we had to put on a hard hat and there's all these men working and it's just filled with possibilities. And it was very exciting. And I don't know when I'll be in that new space performing, but I like to think that I'm one of those community of artists that have helped build the foundations that is going to lead to the younger and the newer people who will be in that space. I mean, I see the season and I go, look at this old man in glasses. He doesn't exactly fit in to 1971 or academia or a musical about comets. My musical ability is, I can put in my shirt pocket. But I like to think that that is happening because of the 66 shows I put in. And I also, oh man, actors are supposed to be able to control their emotions, and here I am trying to. Let me know how I do. When the pandemic came, when the lockdown came, Adam came into the bookstore and said, we have to cancel Doll's House Part 2. We were slated to start rehearsals, I think, in just a few days. And I thought, oh my gosh, there's only 4 of us in the show. It'll just be the 4 of us and Adam and a stage manager, just 6 of us will be fine. And by the time we're through rehearsing, we'll be ready to open, the pandemic will be over. It'll be fine. And, you know, naivete, you know, the actor is always optimistic. That didn't happen. And as it became clear that there was no theater that was going to be happening, my life didn't change entirely. I just hunkered down and I just read. I just sat down and read, you know, I just go to my day job skills and I just read. But as time went on, and really the only options were virtual or streaming, I thought, I can't do that. I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to do theater without you. Because theater doesn't really work for me as an actor with just me. I have to have you there. And that's what made Winter's Tale so special, was to have you there. Tom Stoppard once gave an interview on Charlie Rose, and Charlie Rose was asking about what made those shows so special, and how did they work, and how are they always hits. And Tom Stoppard said, well, you have to realize, Charlie, I mean, I've got an audience that has bought tickets, 2 months in advance, and they're coming there and they're bringing a whole lot to it. They've got all this energy and expectations. I really only have to do half the work. And he's right. So I did not do any streaming. I didn't do any of the virtual pieces. I was scheduled to do Christmas Carol, and I went to Adam and I said, I can't do it. It's not theater for me. And that was tough. And I think I've said no to Riverside maybe 4 times in all these years of things I just didn't think I could do it. And then I began to realize how much theater was part of my identity here in Iowa City. A woman came into the store the other day and said, "You're that actor." And I thought, oh my gosh. And she goes, "I saw you in Godspell out of the community theater. I went 2 or 3 times. I brought friends." That production was, I believe, in 1996. And I thought, I must look pretty good in this light. So when Adam called and said, we're going to do Winter's Tale. We've got vaccinations going. We're going to be safe. We're going to do it outdoors. I initially said, Winter's Tale, not so much. We did it in 2008. We got flooded out. We had to go to City High. The show was just, there's still some scar tissue there. And but then when I saw who was going to be in the show, I changed my mind and I said, I think this will be good for me. And I didn't realize how good it would be for me. Patrick Dulaney and myself and Martin Andrews were all in that 2008 production that got flooded out. And here we were in 2021, reunited. So it brings me back to Adam talking about this community of artists. His first production of The Price, he walked in there and the 4 actors that he had, we'd all done shows together for years. Jim Kern, who played the man appraising the furniture, played Dysart to my Alan Strang in Equus in TCR in 1989, 90. And I don't think this artistic community is incestuous or insular. I think we just like working with each other and we have the opportunity, and Riverside has given us that opportunity to grow and be artists there. Doing Winter's Tale and playing a character that I found so enjoyable. I didn't think I would, but I found a lot in that guy. I used to always play the villains. I remember Miriam coming up to me after Of Mice and Men and saying, "You're the actor we love to hate." So after playing so many villains, it was nice to play someone who was so inherently good and loyal. And I think that Adam didn't take it badly that I said I couldn't do virtuals or streams. He just said, we're doing live theater again, come back. And I was happy to do so, and I'm glad I did. And I wish I could think of something pithy and wonderful to wrap this all up. All I know is that I went there today and looked at that new space and I saw whole lots of possibilities. And I was suddenly envious and jealous. And I thought, there's a high ceiling, the designers will love it. I could picture actors standing on that stage with a nice tight light on them, which was something we could never do in Gilbert Street. I could picture actors going to the bathroom and being able to flush and not being heard on stage. I could, I just thought, now it's such a good growth. We've come to the right place. And I'll be a part of it at some point, I think, down the line. And I hope that you all will be too. Because theater, I've learned, doesn't really work without both of us, with both sides of it. So I appreciate it, and thanks for listening. Thanks very much.
Tim and I would be happy to take any questions you may have. I know we've got about, 10 minutes. So yes, Wally.
Adam, you're new to Iowa City. When did you come?
I arrived in fall of...
Repeating the question.
Oh, so the question is, while I said I'm new to Iowa City, when did I arrive? I am from South Carolina originally. I went to the University of Evansville in Indiana, and in 2001 when I graduated, I moved to New York City and never left. And I was there until 2018. I'd never been to Iowa before I interviewed for this job. And I came in the summer of 2018 to interview, and I thought I could see myself making a life here. As Tim said, the first play I directed was The Price, that Tim was in with Christy Artscript Moores and Jim Kern and Carrie. And I fell in love with the quality of actors here, and I fell in love with I think what no one really told me was how much culture there is here. I didn't know that what the Engleroy was. I didn't really understand what a cinema like Film Scene means to this community, because there aren't a lot of cinemas like Film Scene in other communities. I certainly didn't understand what Hampshire, or for that matter, I don't think I fully understood what Riverside meant to this town. It's been an enormously wonderful town to be a part of. I hope to stay here many, many years. I just bought a house. And this is news to Miriam and Tim. I just got engaged. And so I'm planning on staying as long as I can, as long as we're doing good work here. I really love it here. Yes.
Is it heaven?
Is it heaven? No, it's Iowa. Thank you for that. Other questions? Yes.
I'll try again. Could you be rather pragmatic with us for a while and talk about what this theater's going to cost? And
Sure.
how we're going to get there?
The question is, how much is the theater going to cost, and how are we going to get there? Some of you have those case statements, and it outlines a little bit about what those costs are in there. It's a $1.8 million project. For those of you who like to read 990s and tax documents, Riverside's budget is about $500,000. So in other words, we're raising almost 4 times our annual budget as part of this capital campaign, and continuing to operate. So we also have to be raising the funds to keep our lights on and to be programming like we are. It's a big leap for Riverside. I'm not sure that we could have done this 3 or 4 years ago, certainly not when I arrived. It's exciting that there's that energy there. It's exciting that there is that possibility, and how we're going to get there is in many ways a lot of people in this room. It's a lot of key stakeholders that believe that serious-minded professional theater belongs in a city this size. And let me tell you, there aren't a lot of theaters like Riverside in any town this size. I think this is a community that gets it. And that's been shown through Strength and Grow Evolve, through what Englert and Film Scene have been able to do. It's been shown throughout the Hampshire's almost 50 years of existence, and will need to be shown more because of the Hampshire's relationship with the university. The Art Museum has obviously had an amazing campaign recently. So the possibilities are there. I will say that one way we're going to get there, I think, is to really have a broad campaign. To not just be relying on key donors, and believe me, we need those key donors, but also to be reaching out to maybe people who haven't given to a capital campaign ever in their life, people who believe in what we do, people who want to be a stakeholder, people who are going to be our donors for the next 40 years of Riverside's existence. And I really believe that this capital campaign is not just about raising $1.8 million, but it's also about building a stronger base of support for Riverside. building, getting more members of the community believing in what we do, knowing about what we do. There are many people who never stepped through the door at Gilbert Street or hadn't in many, many years. And I'll say a large piece of how we're going to get there is in part because of the forward-thinking city government, and really making sure that the TIF financing was there, and making sure that people who are building high buildings in our community know that they have to be making the community better when they do it. And the fact that there's now going to be a state-of-the-art premier performing arts black box theater in the heart of downtown, I think speaks to that smart governance. It speaks to smart business people on the other side, and an understanding that a city needs culture to be a great city.
I have an idea for a fundraiser for you. We'll talk about it.
Okay.
What was that, Tim?
There's a kind of a two-person show I've always wanted to do that is sort of edgy and cabaret-ish and all that. And I just thought it would be a good idea to maybe do it as a little fundraiser. I think it would be fun.
Let's talk.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Miriam Gilbert is amazingly one of our honorary chairs of this capital campaign. We will be launching the public phase of it in a month or so. Please speak to Miriam. Please speak to Wally Chappell, who's here. If you're interested in learning more, please call me. We'd love to tell you about it, love to show you the space if you wish to, and love to talk to you about what the future of Riverside is. Any other questions for me, Tim, or Miriam? Yes?
Being pragmatic in a different area, can you talk a little about the challenge of getting the audience up to, what is it, the third floor?
Big.
For those of us who do not run nimbly up steps.
So the question is, talk about the challenge of building a theater on the third floor and what that means. It's not I would say that's a question that has come up, that came up from the very beginning. In New York City, over the last 15, 20 years, there's been a trend of theaters no longer being on street level. Roundabout Underground is 6 floors below the street level. I don't know that scares me a little bit. But Playwrights Horizons, that's won a few Pulitzers over these last 10 years. They have a street level presence, but the theater's on the 3rd floor there. And so they're Lincoln Center 3 also. In a weird way, I would say that every theater I go into, I realize more and more how much I have to go upstairs or in an elevator. Even when I go to the Hancher, it just doesn't feel like it because it's so open. But it's a big concern. One of the biggest changes that we made to the ground plan was to make sure that and I'll try to bring it up here, was to make sure that elevator was right in the middle of the floor plan. And the reason why we wanted to do that was so that when patrons got dropped off at the Graduate Hotel or behind the building, that they would have they wouldn't have to go 50 yards to the elevator and then go 50 yards back. The elevator opens right into the theater. So the old Gilbert Street space had these hairpin turns, and I remember with dread sometimes holding that door and watching people have to navigate this and then go to all the way to the other side of the theater and then navigate again to get to the seats. I think that our patrons are going to find that this is a far more comfortable experience. Coming straight in, getting into the elevator, and then going straight to the seat and not having any of those hairpin turns to deal with. We're building it with that in mind. It's going to take some, I think it's going to be a learning curve for our audience members, and I think for us also. I think we have to be really clear about the parking situation. I think we have to be really clear about the flow, and make sure that we be construct things in such a way that we can get audience in and out quickly. I would say that I would guess that about 75% of the audience members are going to use the elevator to come up, and probably about 50% are going to use the elevator to go down. So more audience members, I think, as the show ends, are either not going to want to wait for the elevator, so they'll go down the stairs, or grab a drink, which is a nice problem to have.
What's the elevator capacity?
I believe right now it's about a 15. So it's a large freight elevator. That's exclusive to Riverside, so we're not going to be competing with other folks. But the elevator is about to go in, so I'll have better answers for that soon. But it's a large elevator for that very reason. Any other questions? Pragmatic or artistic? Yes, Miriam.
I was wondering, you've always been able to bring actors in from outside, I mean, with great love and respect for our community of actors. And I'm just wondering, do you see that continuing with this new space in terms of bringing actors from Chicago, New York, whatever?
So the question is whether Riverside's going to continue to bring in out-of-town actors as part of our kind of planning and artistic mission. Yeah, I think absolutely. I always kind of see Riverside, I see out-of-town actors and talent as a great way to kind of turn the soil, right? You're introducing this new element that kind of makes everyone up their game. It brings in new ideas. It brings a certain level of professionalism to an environment that can otherwise get stagnant. I think that Tim rightly says that Riverside, though it always has had very key artists, has always kind of avoided that stagnancy, I think because of that very reason. Because they've always kind of kept people on their toes, kept the artists and audiences on their toes, and kept kind of upping their game. The other end of that is a number of larger regional theaters only use out-of-town talent. And so the theater stops being representative of its community in any way. And it's a really slippery slope where, basically you've got these great actors living in some areas and they say, oh, they don't hire anyone local. I can't work there. I can't work at this great theater in my own community. I see Riverside as something like a great restaurant that might fly in, an amazing food that you can't get here, but it also has relationships with local farms. That really, so you feel like you get an experience that is very well curated and representative of the place that you're at. I don't think theater in Iowa City should feel like theater in New York or theater in Chicago or theater in Alabama or theater in London. I think it needs to be distinctive of the place that it's in. Anything else?
If not, I'm going to just say thank you so much for coming. And I know Adam will get me more copies of the brochure. I haven't made it over to the theater yet either, because at the time that I was invited, I had just had a fall, and Adam described it as a hard hat area without elevators. And I said, I'll wait. But as soon as those elevators are in, I promise I will go and do the scouting, and I will be able to report back to everybody. And thank you so much and a special, there's a traditional way to end a theater performance. So, Adam and Tim, thank you very much.